As her business grew, she realized that a lot of people from the same team at the same company were coming into her practice. So be 5 or 10 folks from the Google sales team one quarter, a dozen the next quarter. By the end of the year, it'd be like 40 or 50 people from the same team at the same company who would come into her practice. And so there was something around how folks were finding out about this service through work. And we got to talking about how this could become a business and how we could meet people at work. And we generated this idea of a dental office on wheels. We could take it to people at work. And we were talking about opening a third office. And then 2020 happened. COVID happened. Our mobile office closed immediately, indefinitely. It didn't reopen after that. Our brick and mortar office was closed for about 3 months. And the entire world changed.
Welcome to The Value of One, the Power of All, a podcast created by the Ron Brown Scholar Program. Since 1996, this organization has been investing in the next generation of African American leaders. And this podcast highlights the stories of the scholars, alumni, staff, and friends that make this program special. Hey everyone, this is Ray Pryor, 2015 Ron Brown Scholar. And on this episode, I'm excited for you to hear from Lowell Caulder, 2005 Ron Brown Scholar and co-founder of Studio Dental. Since he was a little kid, born in Kentucky and raised in Indiana, Lowell always sought after a challenge. And no surprise, he was a triple major at the University of Pennsylvania, studying finance in the Wharton School of Business, international studies, and urban studies. After a few years in investment banking when he graduated, Lowell headed off to Harvard Business School. But for a variety of reasons, his experience at HBS wasn't a typical one. And a big part of that was because he came into school with an idea. No one loves the dentist, but what if you didn't have to go to the dentist? Or rather, your dentist came to you? What if you took a modern, chic, tech-enabled dentist office, put it on a truck, and parked it outside of the headquarters of, say, Twitter, Square, Dropbox, or Airbnb, where employees could come for an appointment while they're already at work? If restaurants do it with food trucks, why can't dentists do it? That was the idea behind Studio Dental, the company Lowell left business school to launch with his friend and business partner in San Francisco. A couple of mobile offices, a brick and mortar location, and some big tech contracts later, Studio Dental and Lowell are both doing pretty well. Then 2020 happens, and nothing is ever the same for Lowell or Studio Dental. Whether he was a kid moving to a new city or adjusting to a new school, or a CEO making tough decisions at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic with all of the social unrest across the country, Lowell is no stranger to adapting and reinventing himself as he continues to do today. Take a listen to our conversation.
Lowell Caulder, RBS 05. Someone like many listeners to this call for whom Ron Brown Scholarship changed the trajectory of my life. Was born in Lexington, Kentucky. Moved to Indiana when I was in third grade, 8 years old. And so when I think about where I grew up, it was Indiana. I was a kid who was really smart and really unchallenged, maybe in some of my academic environments. So I got into a lot of trouble. I was always in and out of the principal's office. And when I was in middle school, I had a teacher who kind of identified that in me and recommended that I do something about it. She's on the board of a private school in my hometown, and she recommended that I take a test to try and get a scholarship to that private high school. And took that scholarship, got into that school as a college prep school, and that really put me on the pathway to find Ron Brown and to get myself ready to go to college. I ended up going to Penn for undergrad. And maybe I'll step back. I think for a lot of folks, a lot of Ron Brown people, home is can be a really challenging experience. And I think, part of my journey is struggling both in school and at home to figure out who I was and how I wanted to navigate the world. And I think the combination of being at a school that helped to get me ready for college and then being able to go to college in a way that I could afford is something that opened up a lot of doors for me that I wasn't aware of was going to happen before it happened.
Yeah.
Went to Penn for undergrad. I was in the Huntsman program. So it's a dual degree program in the Wharton and the College of Arts and Science. I got a degree in finance there and also in international studies. I got a third degree as well in urban studies. So at the time, I was thinking I wanted to study how to use economics and use the Wharton side of my brain to impact and develop the communities that I grew up in. When I was graduating from college, I was did not really know what the range of options were for work. Really only presented with banking and consulting. I really wanted to be a consultant. I didn't get any consulting offers, but I got an offer from an investment bank, JP Morgan. And so I graduated in '09, went to JP, work on Wall Street for a few years. And when I got there, I absolutely hated it.
Mm.
I lasted 1 year in my analyst program in New York and ended up leaving that program and moving out to San Francisco. We may have talked about this already, but I was on a team of one analyst with supporting 13 people and really just had moved to New York with my friends from college. And so it was basically a fifth year of college and a crazy year of work. And I wasn't enjoying the job. And I was dating some guy who lived on the other side of the country in San Francisco. And I figured I should leave the job. And if I want to try the relationship, that I should move to San Francisco.
Right.
So I found a job in San Francisco. It was still in investment banking, but it was a much different culture. And I worked in that job for 2 years, moved out here to San Francisco, built that relationship, and now I'm married to that person.
Yeah.
And we have a kid.
And you have a kid. Yeah. That's awesome. I wanted to go back, if you don't mind, to you in middle school. Teacher approaches you and says, "Hey, you're a kid with potential. You should consider taking this test to go to the high school." And but you're also a kid that it sounds like you probably were so smart that you were bored and therefore getting into things in school that really smart, talented, but bored kids do, of just trying to figure out who you are. Did you ever feel like that part of you was resolved after you got to this college prep high school that was challenged, got to Penn around all of these talented peers? Like, is this, did you realize that this is who you are and you always want to be challenged and looking for something new?
That's a great question. Who I am today is who I was then.
Mm.
I think as an adult who has bills and jobs and responsibilities and kids, I've learned how to create structures in my life so that my different interests can go into things that are productive and then help me build the life that I want. So yeah, maybe that's the shortest answer. It's still the same me. As I've grown older, I've found ways to put that energy in things that are productive and useful. So
Yeah.
whether it's hobbies or building a company, for example,
Yeah.
or building my family, it's all I've found ways to. I'm always interested in managing multiple projects, being busy in different ways, and I've just applied that to things that I know will help me to create the life that I want and the outcomes
Right.
that I want.
Yeah, that's great. I wanna circle back to that, and obviously we'll dive deeper into what that has looked like for you in the different chapters. Can you talk a little bit about your social experience at the high school that you went to? And then what, if anything, felt different or changed when you went to Penn? And what, if anything, felt different, even though you were with a lot of your friends from college, but still being in the banking culture? What was that like for you? And was it did it inform how you felt you were able to show up in those spaces at all, or do you feel like you were able to be your authentic self in those spaces?
Yeah, so going to this high school, there were 65 people in my graduating class. I think there were three black people in the entire high school, and I was the only black male in my class. So, and it was a school that I went there for high school, but 80% of the folks who were in my class had been going to school together since they were in elementary school or pre-K.
Mm.
So, definitely felt like an outsider and different from everyone else there. But I think that was the beginning of understanding me by understanding my story in the context of other people. I think it was my first exposure to folks who, had wealth, who owned homes, who traveled all the time for vacations. And I think just a life experience of learning what those things are, what they mean, and also what they don't mean. I was in class with folks who weren't any smarter than me, or weren't any more talented than me, or weren't any more ambitious than I was. And so just learning that difference between what people have and what people come from, and who they are, was something that was an experience for that high school experience. I think that got amplified at college,
Right.
right? So, then you make that global, and you're in classes with royalty, with folks who are, from all around the world and all walks of life. And it's also a time in your life where, again, for me, I was just figuring out who I am, who is Lowell, and how is he different from or similar to other folks in the world. And so I think definitely in college, I found my crew and my people, but it's constant adjustment and calibration of who I am in the context of the world and the folks around me.
Right. I like that word you use, calibration. That sounds like it's an interesting way to think about it. I've never thought about it before. I think a lot of scholars have calibrated, recalibrated in a lot of different spaces in their lives, and some of those experiences are really tough and challenging, but they also equip you with the skills to redefine who you are when those spaces change and evolve, and when you change, can kind of respond to the dynamicness of life, which also helps you as an entrepreneur, obviously, as well too.
100%.
Um,
100%.
so that makes sense. And so fast forwarding to you, you're in banking, spend 1 year in New York, decide you want to switch it up and go to California. Were you thinking that after those 2 years that was going to be it, for that you were going to do? Did you know you were going to do something else, or was the plan that you were going to just do banking until you didn't care to do it anymore?
Yeah, I wasn't when I graduated undergrad. I had plans to go to HBS, the business school, and so I knew that was coming. I knew that I had to get out of New York.
Hmm.
I was just I had a miserable lifestyle and didn't like the work, and you know, that was the one thing I knew, and so that was kind of, let's figure that out, and then we'll figure out what's next. So when I took my new job in San Francisco, I committed to at least 2 years, but knew that after those 2 years, I would go back to business school and figure out what I wanted to do from there.
And when did like the light bulb of you want to go to business school, or you want to go to HBS? When did that happen? Was it while you were at Penn, or was it maybe in high school when you were thinking about what career paths you were interested in?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in business. I feel like I'm usually not the smartest person in the room, but I'm highly capable. And though I think those are like skills that help you in business. When I was in high school, I had to work to pay for all my extracurriculars and things. And so I just have always worked and have had that bone in me. And so thinking about grad school, if I was going to go to get a professional, a master's degree, it was going to be in business.
Right.
And so I made that decision when I was an undergrad. I applied as a senior and got into HBS.
Gotcha.
But I think it's based off of my skill set, not being the smartest, but being really capable and being able to kind of integrate a lot of different parts of problems.
It's a dangerous skill set to have, and I'm sure you're being humble
Look
in
out!
that you
Look
are.
out!
Yeah, you're being humble that you are definitely the smartest guy in 99.9% of the rooms you're in. But if you think that you're not, and you move as if you can learn something from other people in the space and then work hard and add something of value, that's it's a special combination. And so I know that after those 2 years in California, you go to HBS and you start your program. How does that go?
Hated it. Hated it.
Yeah. Tell
I
me why.
hated it. I feel like I don't know what you know about business school or folks who've gone to business school, but it feels like once you get there, well, let me say it this way. I'm someone who went to business school and I had friends before I got there. It feels like
Mm,
sometimes when you are in the first year of business school, there's a lot of excitement about these are the people who are going to be your best friends for the rest of your life. They're going to be your business partners for the rest of your life.
right.
But I had that. I had a really solid core of folks who I were friends who I considered family. And when I went to Boston for business school, those folks were on the other side of the world, on the other side of the country.
Right.
And so it took me a while to jump in and to really wear the same shirt as everybody else. For me, the first year of business school, folks from a wide range of backgrounds, professional backgrounds, go get their MBAs. And the first year, everyone is kind of getting up to speed on what are some of the basics of business programs. And a lot of the stuff that we learned in the first year was stuff that it was a part of my undergraduate degree. So I think from an academic perspective, a lot of that first year was repeat. So that in combination with, the fact that I didn't feel socially like it was the most amazing thing, the fact that I was paying for it. So there's a lot of travel and a lot of out of pocket expense associated with grad school. And I had the idea for studio dental before I went to business school as well. So all of those, and the more time I was in business school, felt like it was draining my financial resources and time away from this business idea that I had. And so all those really combined to me feeling like I was not in the right place at that time.
Just drawing some parallels there. You already know everything pretty much in the classes. Socially, you're like, I've got my people already. I'm not necessarily not opposed to making new friends, but I don't need to find my besties here right now. You're probably bored in the same way that I imagine middle school you was a little bit, right? So I
Same
can
me,
see, yeah,
same me in a different situation.
yeah, and so I want to circle back to we'll finish the HBS story in a second, but take me back before to the genesis of Studio Dental. Where does that idea begin? It sounds like in California, maybe during the couple of years you were there working in banking. Where does that start?
Yeah. So I actually had a really close friend here in San Francisco who owns a dental practice. She started that practice right after she graduated from dental school, and it was wildly successful. Grew really rapidly, and provide amazing dental services. But I think the key difference and the key driver to the growth was that her office was really well designed. It was modern and chic, and I think they really did something smart around the member experience that attracted folks really rapidly. As her business grew, she realized that a lot of people from the same team at the same company were coming into her practice. So, be 5 or 10 folks from the Google sales team one quarter, a dozen the next quarter. By the end of the year, it'd be like 40 or 50 people from the same team at the same company who would come into her practice. And so there was something around how folks were finding out about this service through work. And we got to talking about how this could become a business and how we could meet people at work. And we generated this idea of a dental office on wheels. We could take it to people at work and deliver dental services out of this mobile office. So we had that idea the summer before I went to business school and put it on paper before I left. And I used that first year of business school to actually test that idea and to put it into business plan competitions. And I used it as my, creative source for any assignments where it was appropriate. So I actually used that year as sort of a workshop to continue to kind of flesh out the idea.
And that's fascinating. I don't know if anybody enjoys going to the dentist, but I think if it was designed nice, modern feel, and particularly if I didn't need to go to it, but it came to me, that sounds like a very attractive experience or something
And
that
the
nobody
fact
really
that
wants to do. You know,
it's all covered by your insurance. Your boss goes, so you don't really have to, it's not like you're taking a day off work and all your
right,
coworkers are going. And, if you have any cavities or anything, you can get them taken care of that same day or that same week. Is really an unlock of just convenience. Where
right,
if it can feel like something that you are looking forward to and that doesn't cost you that much, either financially or, you know, work wise with your other commitments, then it's really a no brainer.
right. And then no, we talked about this too. That where you are, with tech companies in your backyard, made a lot of sense for this as well. Especially, I'm just imagining the, the busyness of tech life, and this convenience would be very very attractive to folks, and that they would
Yeah,
share that. You know,
this is back in 2014 too. This was when Uber was first starting to get busy here, and all of these tech companies were battling with each other for talent. And so, the more perks that they could offer, the better off they'd be in terms of in the hiring market. So the idea
Right.
that they could say that they have a dry cleaner, they've got food in the office, and we also have a dentist who comes here once a quarter. It was a pretty easy sell for folks.
Right. And so you kind of have two customers. You have the company that it sounds like maybe they contract with Studio Dental to be a part of this comprehensive benefits, awesome employee experience. And then obviously you've got the more traditional business model of a dental offices that charge insurance for different services. Uh, that's great. Did you guys find? Well, maybe we'll get there in a second. You can tell me if we're jumping ahead. This might be after you officially launched Studio Dental. It sounds like a lot of the buzz was just organic. I imagine you didn't need to do a whole lot of marketing, even though I imagine that the same folks who have the instincts to design a really beautiful dental office probably know how to craft a message well too, or how to put together a picture or an experience to share about it. Was marketing a concern for you guys early on, or were you confident that you found the medium through which people were clearly telling others about this great experience? So if you just find the right person, it kind of domino effects from there.
Yeah. So I think about everything as marketing. So the color we painted the trailer, how we describe the services, how we talk about our dentist, it's all marketing. So, and I think
Right.
we focus a lot of time and energy on marketing.
Yeah.
Um, we found out really early that people talk about their dentist through word of mouth. So we did a lot of work around getting people to talk about this service with other folks. So our first introductions with companies like Dropbox, Twitter, and Square, Airbnb, we got introduced to these companies just based off of our own personal networks. So we got a friend to send a company-wide email at Dropbox back in 2014, and at the time it was the size of company that makes sense. Now
Right.
those companies are too large for that to make sense.
Right.
But we would get someone who was known and trusted to recommend us, and then every person who came in, we sent them back into their office with two things: pocket dental floss, two of them, and a pocket toothbrush. And the idea was you take these two back and give it to someone else.
Right.
And that was how we really incentivized folks to be talking about it. We got some
Right.
newspaper articles and that, but it was really do an amazing job and give people an experience that they want to talk about.
Right.
And so, like, the delivery of the service for us was marketing. The
Mm.
first thing that we say to you when you walk in was marketing. The way that we communicate with you via email was all marketing. We wanted to be designed in a way that folks wanted to talk about it.
I like that. And so when you are using this to enter different, maybe pitch competitions or present as part of your classes in your first year, what kind of reception did you get from the HBS network or community where people, oh my gosh, this is genius. Why isn't there one down the street in Cambridge? Or was there kind of like, I don't really know what this is. I really thought about the dentist that much or that deeply. I don't really talk about it that much. What was kind of the
Yeah,
reception in that year that you were using it to as kind of the sandbox?
that's a good question. So, we were doing all these pitch competitions for what's called venture capital firms. And these are companies that want to put in a little bit of capital, and companies that are um, that don't have hard assets that they can grow really rapidly. A lot of internet-based businesses right now,
Right.
and they just didn't see how this was an idea that they would back.
Mm.
They all said that it was great, sounds good, but the economics of it just didn't work out for them. And so, while folks agreed that it was something that was cool and that we needed, we weren't getting investors to bite or say that they would be interested in investing in the company.
Okay, gotcha. And I think that was probably a doing that there was probably a great experience both for you and your partner because you not only get confirmation that maybe this financing structure of VC isn't going to work, and maybe this just doesn't make sense for what we're trying to do, and or maybe it does. You can find the right person, but it sounds like you also got a lot of confirmation that there's something here. This is very intriguing. This is interesting. I see how it could work, and I imagine you took some confidence back with you to California when you officially launched. So you have your first year at HBS. You don't enjoy it. You're bored, but you're pitching. what happens after that?
So I finished my first year, I packed all my bags, and I moved back to San Francisco. By the end of that first year, I'd secured a loan from a bank to help us build out our first office. We had letters from a couple of clients who said that they would be interested in the service when it was live, and we were working on some designs with an architect to build the first office.
Right.
And I said, "Let this is going to be my internship this year, and we'll see what happens."
Right.
HBS has a rule. I can't remember if it's 5 or 7 years, but if you leave, you can come back in 5 to 7 years with no questions asked. So my what I was thinking was I'm going to go launch this company. If things fall, then I'll come back to business school. I'll finish my degree and figure out where I'm going to go from there.
Can you walk me through a little bit about what that process was like when you explored how are we going to get the money to build out the first office, and a bank loan ends up falling through? What was that process like for you? Because I know it sounds like maybe you went to Boston thinking maybe we find a VC that latches onto this idea, doesn't work out, and then you end up landing on a bank. Were there any other places that you, or any other ways that you thought about or attempted to raise some money to get started?
Yeah, so we did a an Indiegogo campaign.
Yeah.
Do you remember Indiegogo?
Oh
This is
yeah.
like a
Yeah.
starter competitor. I
Yeah.
don't know if they're still around, but before we had a dental office, we pre-sold dental services, and the first 50 people who participated in that were my classmates from HBS.
Wow.
And so I think when I think back to the value of that education, and they always said this is going to be the folks who are going to help you out in your life and in your business. Like that showed up for me 100% at the beginning of this company.
Yeah.
We pre-sold a bunch of services and raised a little bit of money then, but that Indiegogo campaign actually caught the attention of an accelerator that is focused on healthcare here in San Francisco. And the leader of the accelerator at the time reached out to us, said, "This is an amazing idea. You guys have to be come work here." And so that was our first office space. We moved
Good.
in there the summer of 2014. And, I made my first hire from someone who works there. And still today, I'm really close with the leader of that organization. And so that was a place where, it gave us an office, some place to go every day to do work, and some validation that we had something here that people were interested in.
Yeah, I imagine that's the biggest compliment. With that accelerator, it sounds like they give you office space. Did they give you any capital as well, or take
We
any
didn't
stake
take
in the
any
company
money
or
from
anything?
them. This was
Okay.
like a discussion that we had this experience of trying to pitch to these VCs, and no one biting. I think that experience really colored the way we thought about venture capital throughout the way we built the business. After that, after being told no long enough, we developed a sense of like, these aren't our partners. Venture capital is not our partner. And, there's more, especially with healthcare services, we were interested in redesigning the way it's delivered. We felt like investors wouldn't really understand what vision we had around dental services.
Mm.
And so we got really, it left a bad taste in our mouth. And in times in the future when we were offered venture capital, we would say no. So we didn't take any money from this accelerator. We just took the office space. But again, like time and time again, later in the company's history, when we had the opportunity to invest or to take venture capital, we ended up saying no. And I think that had, positive and negative impacts on the business.
Right. Yeah, maybe we can circle back to later on, years down the line, and what impacts you think may have changed or
Yeah.
impacted the outcome. So I just wanted to make sure I get this right. So your partner is a dentist, has this office that is miles ahead of every other office that we've been to, and it kind of inspires all of this. But this first location is a different one, or is it kind of a kind of building from scratch off of what kind of she had already started, or was it the same location that
Great
she had?
question. So something else about her practice, she owned it with another dentist that she went to business school with. The business was growing gangbusters, but it was managed really poorly. Employees were unhappy. The I think just the business stuff was not being managed very well. And so she was interested in leaving that partnership and starting a new partnership where, it's co-owned by a dentist and someone with operations business background and someone who could, focus on member experience. And so she actually, at the same time I left business school, she sold her practice. and we jumped into
Got it.
this new practice together.
Got it. Okay. So you guys get along. You start building. How does that go? What happens next?
I think like all construction projects, it was, took too long and it was over budget. When, we drove it up. So the trailer was built in Los Angeles area, and we went down there, picked it up on a Sunday, drove it back on Monday, had it stocked full of stuff on Tuesday, and started seeing patients on Wednesday.
Wow.
We were ready. We
Yeah.
were, at the end of, the cash that we had in the bank, and just needed to have some revenue, some income from folks who were paying for services.
Man, that's an intense 72 hours or so of
It
go
is,
get
but we
it
were ready.
and
That was what we were doing. That,
right,
we're used
right.
to doing a lot of different things, and what we were doing was starting this company.
Yeah. I imagine, like you said, a lot of projects take more time and more money than you plan and hope. You guys were probably antsy, ready for it. Like really hurry up. Why isn't it done or what are the delays? So I can see that being a really exciting time.
I think for both of us too, we get so much energy from serving people. Our product is a service for
Right.
people who hate going to the dentist, never liked it, never wanted to, and our ability to wow someone every single day, wow multiple people day in and day out, is really fulfilling.
Right.
It's way more fulfilling than doing back and forth with Chase about your bank loan. It's way more fulfilling than digging into the details of plumbing drawings of your office.
Right.
Um, but for me, I still get drive and energy from delivering the service. And I'd say the same thing for my business partner as well.
And just coming back to the financing piece, was your partner already having a practice and maybe having a kind of a blueprint about what you guys were going to build? Was that key in you guys securing the the loan from the bank, or was the bank kind of taking a bigger risk than maybe we would think a bank would traditionally by
Both,
yeah, okay.
both. The fact that she had a practice that was successful was helpful, but the banks thought about a mobile office and they just didn't really know how to understand it.
Right.
And so I think the fact that she had a practice was helpful, but the amount of loan that they gave us was so small, and it took months of us getting there for them to get comfortable with the idea.
Right. And so you guys start seeing patients on that Wednesday. Guess over time secure some of those the big companies that I guess weren't so big back then, but ended up being
Right.
super duper big and household names now. Can you share with me a little bit about what that growth was like when it officially started and hit? Was it exhilarating for the part of you that always wanted this and was looking forward to serving people so well and serving more people? Or was it overwhelming and kind of like drinking water out of a fire hose and you guys had more than you knew what to do with?
Yeah. There's so much that goes into delivering a service. When I was in high school, I worked at Taco Bell, and like I wrote all my business school essays about it, and it's an experience that I still refer back to in business today.
Yeah.
And what fascinates me about a business like that is that we as customers experience it in one way at one time, once whenever we consume it. But the operation is constantly running, and there's just a whole machine of things that, for the Taco Bell example, you know, get that hot taco to you when you order it. And that stuff always just fascinates me, and I love getting to the details of it. And that's what we did to start this business. I had someone who knew how to deliver a dental service, but everything else about how do you acquire patients, how do you file insurance claims, how do you decide what insurance, what procedure code, how do you collect from insurance companies, how do you collect from patients when they didn't pay you enough, how do you collect from insurance companies when they didn't pay you enough. There's so much around being able to deliver a really high quality experience that I was really driven by and get really excited about today. So we spent the first year or so really as us two, the main two operators, building the system. It was exhilarating more than it was overwhelming. And I think just the fun of doing it with someone you're really close with, and also delivering something that people, you know, are excited by and enjoying was, we were running on adrenaline for that first year.
Yeah.
Um, I'd say after that, we started to hire other folks to help to support us. That's a whole nother body of work as well. How do you take what you just did and articulate it, systematize it, and teach other people how to do it? And this is all stuff that you don't learn in business school. You don't learn in your personal life. This is work,
Right.
and it was. But I think that kept me busy. I was never bored
Right.
in those first couple of years, and just being fully immersed in the deep end without having anyone telling you how to do it is was a place that I felt really happy and exhilarated by.
Yeah. Your thirst was finally quenched. Sounds like at least
Yeah.
at least in a significant way for a time. Going back to this, you graduate from Penn. You spend first year banking in New York, and then 2 years after that, you spend a year at HBS, and now you are a founder, co-founder, an entrepreneur. Was being an entrepreneur something that you thought about that whole time? Because I know we talked about some of your interests. You had interest in business, and obviously you had a background in finance from undergrad that you then took to business school. But you could have all of those things and want to be a great executive at a company, similar to what you're doing now,
Yeah.
right? So was wanting to do your own thing and be your own boss, or to have a business partner like you have, was that something you always desired, or was that something that you kind of discovered was a lifestyle and a work style that kind of fit who you are and who you
Mhm.
wanted to be?
I always wanted to be a general manager. Again, I think I can integrate a lot of different moving pieces to solve really complex problems. I think that's what general managers do. I had that experience of not getting these consulting offers that I wanted. And I think, I had the experience in banking where I looked around, I didn't admire the folks that I worked for or, didn't want to grow up to be them. And I think, as I was leaving that banking experience, I was just feeling like I didn't want to climb a corporate ladder, that, the job that I wanted at the level that I wanted to be at was not available to Black MBA grads who have never, who have had 3 years of banking experience. And so the job that I wanted didn't exist. And I think that made me more comfortable with starting my own thing, feeling that level of responsibility I wouldn't get going to work for somebody else. That level of ownership I wouldn't get by going out into the job market.
Right.
And so that kind of got me. I never dreamed of being an entrepreneur, but when I kind of stacked up what I wanted to do with what was out there, starting my own thing was to me the best way to give me the work that I wanted.
So after that first year of running on adrenaline, I know that you guys end up having multiple locations, and I remember last time we talked, you described your model of a lot. You have a few mobile offices that are going to different workplaces, but then you guys decide to also do a traditional brick and mortar one as well. Can you talk through a little bit about when you made that decision and when it makes sense and kind of the strategy behind that?
Yeah, so we had one mobile office that went to several different locations around the city of San Francisco. Um, we were really full really quickly. Within 6 months, we were at 100% capacity, and uh, that office had two operatories in it. And
Okay.
our vision for the business was always to sort of have a hub and spoke model where we use brick and mortar offices as our hubs, but then use mobile offices as spokes to go around the city and acquire patients and then funnel folks back to our brick and mortars where we could do higher revenue, higher margin work. So we took the energy of our full mobile office and raised some more money, got another loan, built a brick and mortar office. And, I think I went into that experience feeling like I was had some experience having built out an office before and having run the operation, but it's still a whole nother beast of managing a landlord's environment and building in physical location that, has its own issues and unforeseen conditions. So that build out took probably about 18 months. Again, longer than I wanted it to be and over budget. But part of the vision was to have mobile and brick and mortars, and we opened our brick and mortar office in 2017.
This might be from my own knowledge since I go to the dentist enough to get my cleanings and for them to tell me I need to get the back two teeth and a little bit more. What are some of those? I imagine maybe like cleanings. It sounds like cavities can happen on the mobile offices, but maybe the brick and mortar is. Are we talking things like root canals or something that's a bit more intense and like you said, higher revenue, higher margin? Are those the kind of services that you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah. In the mobile
Okay.
office, we can do pretty much anything you can do in the brick and mortar.
Okay.
But the challenge of the brick and mortar, or sorry, the challenge of the mobile is scheduling. So I'm at Airbnb for 3 weeks, a quarter, but I leave and I'm somewhere else later.
Right.
And so, this we're counting on having a centralized location where folks could know they could always go there. But then also we wanted to bring in specialists, and specialists are the folks who they can generate much higher revenue at much higher margins. But it's difficult to get a specialist to meet you at this location one month and a different location another month. The idea was to have that the brick and mortar be where we do things that just require a little bit more planning and coordination.
Right.
With specialists too, there you've got sometimes you'll send something off to the lab and you get the lab back to the office and you have to figure out where the mobile truck is based off where the schedule is. It's just a lot of scheduling complexity with the moving office.
Right.
It made it really convenient for folks to come in and get their routine things and figure out what else needed to be done. But there are more complex coordination challenges that were just amplified when the office is also moving.
And before you want to have this brick and mortar where specialists could go do those services, had your partner had specialists at her practice as well, or was having outside of just I guess the more traditional dental hygienist, was that new? Just bringing on new expertise, new people to manage, new services, like you said, to plan for and strategize. What did she bring some of that experience too, or were you guys both kind of figuring out how to do this kind of tangential thing to the more traditional dental work?
Yeah, so most traditional dental offices will just have a network of specialists that they refer to.
Right.
They are not, affiliated. They're not in their office. You just, someone needs a root canal or a really complex extraction, you can just refer to an outside specialist. Um, she always had that understanding of like, if we could bring this in house, that would be a much stronger business.
Right.
Um, it's not something that she did at her previous office, but it was always a part of how we wanted to build Studio Dental.
Gotcha. Okay.
And from the patient perspective, I think that's, even better as well. Our experience was so seamless that patients would be really frustrated when they had to call our specialist and they didn't have their stuff together as well as we did. And
Right.
so we were thinking that we could be able to bring it all in house for the member, but also benefit us because we'd be able to make some more money off of it, keep some
Right.
of that revenue in house.
I can immediately see complaints of why do I go to Studio Dental to get my cleaning, but I just need this thing. I just need a scheduling done. Like scheduling in healthcare, period, can be a super cumbersome, difficult process. I'm sure at Studio
Yes.
Dental it's easy. Payment can be a huge, just pain in the neck outside of just the money. And you guys made that experience really seamless.
So business is growing really nicely. Our brick and mortar office had five operatories. So
Okay.
from 2017 to 2019, growing from two operatories to seven operatories, we tripled the size of the business, grew the team, grew the processes. And we were talking about opening a third office. And then 2020 happened. In
Mm.
March 2020, our COVID happened. Our mobile office closed immediately, indefinitely. It didn't reopen after that. Our brick and mortar office was closed for about 3 months, and the entire world changed.
Right.
Our strategy was really around being meeting people at work. And here in San Francisco, people stopped going to work. Most people, a lot of workers in San Francisco aren't even back in the office. And so we spent 2020, 2021 just refiguring out what we wanted to do with the business and what the new strategy was.
It was a shocking change for everybody in a lot of different ways, personally, work wise, and across a lot of different areas of life. Like you said, changed, and some changed for good. What did you do? Like the like the lifeline of what you built this amazing company on. At least, I mean, we at the time we didn't know, like you said, and technically for the purposes of this, some folks are still not back, so it still hasn't ended, quote unquote, right?
Mhm.
What? How did you feel? First of all, obviously you're going to strategize and figure out maybe how to pivot and to do other things, but what was that feeling like watching something that you had built since right 2014 kind of explode a little bit, at least
Yeah.
temporarily, if we didn't know how long it was going to be?
Yeah. The one of the reasons that I felt really comfortable leaving business school to start this business was that I knew that dentistry was recession proof, that people always
Yeah.
have teeth and, the data is clear before 2020, even when the greater economy went into recession, dentistry stayed stable.
Right.
Um, that wasn't what happened during COVID. I think dentistry was even harder hit than even other parts of healthcare. Because
Right.
people think about it as elective, and because of aerosolized particles, it was decimated. I even, saw that dental offices that were in people's neighborhoods were busier than dental offices that were, in closer to where people work. So
Mm.
I think all of our choices around let's be where people work, you know, were I think led to us being hit even harder by COVID. What do we do? Immediately, it's how do you increase the amount of money that you have coming in? How do you decrease the amount of money you have going out? So
Right.
for 3 months, it was crisis management, and there was federal funds available. We had to renegotiate the terms on any loans that we had outstanding. We had to figure out we still had to be open for our patients who had emergencies,
Mhm.
but it was really just scrambling to figure out what monitoring the news, figuring out how long this was going to last. And then also, this is also the time where Black Lives Matter protests were spilling over. And I just think there was a lot of social unrest. And as a CEO, it was challenging to manage the fact that we had a business that was changed forever. We were in a social environment that was changing, and that we were all disconnected. Where, in a company where we usually are with each other in person every day, we we weren't, and it was just everything was new, everything was different, and it was it was crisis management for a good 6 months.
Little Lowell's definitely not bored anymore
I was
during
not bored during that
during
time.
that time. Yeah. And I know coming out of, whatever out of means, out of the pandemic, you guys make some pretty significant changes to your model. Obviously, you said the mobile office closes indefinitely, and that just doesn't make sense anymore. What changes end up coming out of that period over that like first year or 2 years of the pandemic?
Yeah, so I'd say 2021 was just trying to get demand back.
Yeah.
Um, we had to let go of a lot of people to match our team with the new demand that we had. We had to acquire new customers because our, corporate customers were not delivering clients anymore. We had to figure out new go-to-market strategies, how to get the word out because, word of mouth wasn't enough because folks weren't sharing this information in their office channels. So there was a lot of that. And then there was, a focus on how do we redesign these operations so that they were the most efficient, highest impact, lowest cost. And so we got rid of some product lines that were more complicated and complex, and just scaled back our services to the things that we did really well, and scaled back our people to the people who did those things really well. And so we spent a lot of 2022 just figuring out how do we slim down the operation, design it so that it can run on its own really efficiently, and change the strategy from trying to scale and having a bunch of offices to having one office that's high revenue, high margin, and operated really well.
Obviously, you may have to make a lot of tough decisions, but I think letting people go during a time when obviously there's uncertainty everywhere, but kind of reaching the conclusion that laying folks off is what is best and what has to happen. walk me through what goes through your head as you made those kinds of decisions. And since they are you have a duty or a responsibility to steward the business, but you're also a great guy and a human. And my hunch is you probably like these people since you work with them and you hired them, and this was a great place to work, not just to be a customer. So what was that experience like, making those kinds of tough management calls?
Yeah. I always think about it as a hat that I have to wear. As a CEO of this company, it's my responsibility to steward the business and the people who work in it. I think what made it challenging, particularly during COVID, and this is true always, the environment, the economic environment, the business environment, the competitive environment are never really clear. And so you really have to go off of what, some gut instinct. But COVID was so new for me. I mean, that change as a CEO was just so new for me. I think it took me a while to wrap my head around what was happening and what we should do as a result of it. Especially, I think I'm an optimist also and felt like COVID was going to be over quickly and that, we just go back to normal. And I think it took me longer than it should have to realize that this was a new normal that was different and smaller. And I would say as a CEO, I think I took too long to make decisions around letting folks go and slimming down the size of the business and redirecting the operations. As a leader, who knows? I think was an experience leading a business through this business cycle, and I will lead another business through another business cycle, and will definitely bring this experience with me. But I guess in answer to your first question, I always just think about putting on a different hat,
Yeah.
and it's not, Lowell is still wearing that hat, but my responsibility is a little bit different when I'm wearing the CEO hat.
And so after going lean with personnel and services and product lines, and how you're acquiring customers, I know that Studio Dental is still here, but the chapter of Studio Dental in your life ends up concluding at some point. Can you share a little bit about when that became clear, and what that process was like, and kind of where things ended up?
Yeah. A new business with endless growth opportunities and a ton of problems to figure out is where I like to be. It's where I shine and where I can integrate disparate things to solve really complex problems. A pretty boring, well run, well executed, not sexy dental office was less interesting to me. And so as we got closer to achieving that milestone, I got more interested in finding a new body of work. My business partner did not feel the same way. I think she was really excited by the unsexy, execution oriented work involved in that business. And I think COVID was just really challenging. As I said, this person is someone who was really close to me, really close when we started the business. But the challenges of managing that business and that relationship through COVID was just took a toll.
Yeah.
And so by the time that, late 20, early 2020, we were ready to figure out a different way to operate that business, and to not do it together. So I started looking for other things. I had a kid in 2022 also, and just felt like I wanted to use that as a time to turn the page and start a new chapter.
Okay.
So I ended up selling my shares of Studio Dental to my business partner and started looking for a new job.
Circling back to what you said earlier, when I asked you if being an entrepreneur was something you always wanted to be, and you're like, no, not necessarily. I kind of knew I was coming out of business school, and I knew what I could do, and knew that no one was going to hire me to do that. So it made sense then. And I imagine similar thoughts happen when you realize that this chapter of Studio Dental is going to close. It's that it sounds like you don't necessarily have like another company that you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go start this now. The moment that Studio Dental that you sell your shares, but you are looking for the next challenge, the next new business or new department, new program, new opportunity that has a bunch of unknowns and challenges that are there. And that is very entrepreneurial in nature, but I admire and am inspired by you that it doesn't need to look that way. And so when you were when you were looking for new opportunities, how were you talking about the experience at Studio Dental? Were you saying, "I'm a great manager," which you were, and so I can manage anything, whether I'm the owner or not? Or was there a part of you that wanted to find another company that was kind of young and then to maybe join them and to be a partner there as well? Or what was the type of opportunity you were hoping to land after that?
Yeah. A couple of different things I was thinking about. One, I'll say I got a coach to help me understand
Mm,
what, you know, how I should talk about myself in the job market. And we did some just work exploring what I liked and what I was good at and what areas I shined. I also knew that I was not looking for the total responsibility of a new company.
mm,
I was looking for something still with a lot of problems to figure out, but just some more stability and not total responsibility. Though that was sort of my framework. Within that, I was able to say, I do healthcare delivery. I do innovative healthcare delivery. I know how to design healthcare delivery systems. I know how to do all the back office stuff. I know how to work with clinicians. And so I was looking for jobs that would use those skills. It was, either going to be some large health system or some hospital, but I was thinking I have a diverse skill set and I want to use those in a company that, or in a space of a company that does innovative healthcare delivery.
Was there any part of you that thought about going back to business school at that point? I don't know if you were within your window that
Window
you
was
could.
closed.
Window
Window
closed.
was closed. If the window was open, no, I live in San
Yeah.
Francisco. Again, I'm settled here. I have a family here now. It
Right.
wasn't on the table to go back. And I think I learn a lot by doing. I feel like a lot of the education that I would have gotten there, have gotten whenever I've needed it by either doing or by picking up a book from a professor who works at HBS to figure out
Mm,
what they'd say about this particular thing.
right.
So even after, I never really had the desire to go back to HBS after leaving that first year.
Yeah, I can see your evolution, and like I said, I think you have a gift of being able to bounce in and out of situations, not strictly based on certain parameters that need to exist or what you need, but when it makes sense for you. And when you come out of studio dental and like you said, you're looking for an opportunity to be entrepreneurial and creative, but with some stability, and you're a dad now, right? And and you've got a family
Can
to
you hear
think
my
about.
daughter screaming her head off upstairs?
No, I can't.
Okay,
You got a good mic, but
you got
those are
it.
the things that you've got to think about now, right?
Yeah.
So things are different, and I think it's great that you found a way to, by all intents and purposes, a very successful stint as an entrepreneur. Like you built something great. Obviously, the pandemic changed a lot of things, and it may not have been the exit that you thought, but you had one, and most don't have anything close to that. And now you found a lane where you can still exercise those muscles and still get the other parts of being a part of a bigger company that you get.
Yeah, and I'm
That's
just
great.
getting started. One of my role model, mentor, North Star is my mom. And
Mm,
I grew up seeing her switch careers when it just didn't feel right, when it
yeah.
wasn't working. And I go a lot based off of what does this feel like to me now? What do I want it to feel like? And knowing that I have the skills to do something else if this ain't it. So this is feels like career number two. But I'm still young and I have a lot in me still. And
Yeah.
so I think I feel really happy with where I am and know that there's a lot more to go.
Any ideas keeping you up at night of new things you want to start?
Nothing that I want to start. So I have a
Yeah.
job. I'm a general manager now at a healthcare company that does innovative healthcare delivery. And there's a lot of problems to solve and a lot of moving pieces and a lot of interesting challenges to take on. So that's
Yeah.
great. If I were to start something again, I don't have a desire right now to start something again from
Right.
scratch. I think I would have an interest in leading a company again.
Right.
Um, but I don't have I'm not in a place where I'm not saying that I never would, but I don't feel that desire that right at this moment.
No, that makes sense, and good that you have clarity in that. Obviously, when you're starting from scratch and you wear all of the hats, you get to see your fingerprint on all the different parts of the business. But just the reality is that smaller company, the scale of that impact is usually smaller, especially at the beginning. Do you enjoy now being part of a bigger company that is still along the spirit of what you enjoy thinking about is solving? How can we make healthcare feel and look and be different? But now you're maybe able to do that at a bigger scale. Is that kind of satisfying to you? In that you're able to lead something a bit bigger ship, even though it's not necessarily just yours?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The At this company that I'm at now, there are definitely a lot more zeros behind everything. You know, the revenue is higher, the expenses are higher, the number of people who are impacted is way higher. What I think I'm more struck by though is how similar the problems are and how similar the solutions are. I think at the core, it's understanding what the problems are, and getting really clear on where you're trying to go and how you're going to do it. And it like the size of the company, I don't think changes that. I've been more surprised by how similar it is than how different.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Value of One, The Power of All, a podcast created by the Ron Brown Scholar Program. If you want to hear more inspiring conversations like this one, don't forget to click subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. To learn more about the organization, check us out at ronbrown.org.